The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to the AI in Action podcast as part of our Alldus podcast series. And my name is Mark Kelly, Chief Customer Officer at Alldus International. And today I'm very happy to welcome Marin Ferara, Senior Consultant Data Science at Data Insights. Marin, great to have you on the show today.
Great to be here. I really love podcasts and it's a big honor for me to be on one.
Thank you so much, Marin. Tell us a little bit about your background journey to now into data science, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about Data Insights, the company.
I recently came up with a great description for myself. I would call myself a full stack data insighter. I started the Data Insights 5 years ago as a junior consultant, and I went from more like an ETL developer to a data scientist, to a data scientist / data engineer. Recently, I've been doing also a lot of pure data engineering work. And now I'm also transitioning into a role where I also talk to the customers more, do account management, and also empower my colleagues to deliver great projects and also take over more responsibilities. And what does Data Insights do? So Data Insights was formed I think a year before I joined it. When I joined it, we were 8 people, and since then we've been at least doubling in size every year. Now we're about 100 people, and we're also soon forming a group of companies, so that's easily 300 data experts. What we do is, we are an IT consulting company, and we focus on data, so anything data related. If you would look at our offering, it consists of 4 bigger pillars. A big part is Ab initio. Ab initio is one of the strongest softwares in the world for data processing. They call themselves CIA of big data. They're the best, but nobody knows them. And then the other side, there's 2 bigger pillars, which are one data engineering, cloud engineer, and then also data science. We have also one overarching company called Data Strategy, which is aimed at the customers that don't have really their data strategy worked out, and we help them identifying useful use cases and then also come up with projects that they might benefit from and implement them.
Thank you very much for that really comprehensive overview, Marin. So tell us a little bit more detail about some of the customer problems or challenges that you help address and how you go about defining what objectives and outcomes you want to help succeed with.
Our motto is from idea to product, and that's what we always strive to do. We are not the company that comes and makes a great plan, comes up with a great project, and then someone else implements it. And we're also not the company that just comes to do the dirty technical work. The way we want to do it is form, sometimes even start from the strategy if the customer doesn't have the strategy yet, and then design the whole project and also deliver it. And this is, I would say, are the most interesting projects where it really goes from idea to production. One example of it would be, it really started with these data strategy workshops where we ask the customer, where are your problems, and identify together with them use cases that they could benefit from. And then also some were chosen upon, and those got first implemented as a POC to really prove to the customer this data seems valuable. And in this case, it was about the predictive maintenance. So they could see that they can benefit from it. And this is currently also being implemented and rolled out in a productive system. Another interesting thing is sometimes the simpler solution will work better than more of a complicated, complex algorithm or a machine learning algorithm. But we recently also encountered a case where there was not a lot of training data available. It was about image data. And we used also some state-of-the-art that works really well with small amounts of data, and that also worked great. So we encountered both cases where it's really simpler is better, but also cases where a state-of-the-art algorithm really benefits you.
It's a really interesting point you mentioned, because sometimes you can get to work on some challenging problems, but unless you really define this problem in a lot of detail, and you could be putting deep learning onto something that could be done by regression analysis. And what we find is that you're trying to overcomplicate something, which is great for the CV, but it's not very good for the client or the end customer. And I always think, don't reinvent the wheel. It's important to try to keep things simple, because usually the simpler the better in terms of managing as well. Tell us a little about some of the challenges to applying these projects, because I always see in AI, you're like this mountaineering guide that you're helping people through Everest, and you're helping them through all the different psychological phases of projects, because sometimes their expectations are certain high, you're taking them at ups and downs. Sometimes you need a bit of a rest point, you need to speak to the troops. Talk me through a little bit about that.
From my point of view, well, first challenge in data science in general is that you constantly have to prove the value. In more traditional software projects is, well, the customer knows what they need, and there is a relatively straightforward way to get to it. But in data science, it's a relatively new field, so it's also not, and it also strongly depends on the data if something is even possible. So it's really, that's one of the challenges, is to keep looking for the value and showing it, and try to fail as fast as possible. So I really also be rigorous to say, be disciplined enough. There seems to be nothing there. We tried everything, and this is not worth to pursue. Like, it's really hard in nowadays where everyone's posting, oh, we did this with AI, we did that with AI, to say this approach is not going to work. Let's look for an alternative. The other challenge that I see is, so data science is also, I said before that it's a relatively new field, but it's becoming more and more mature. So it's also really important that whoever develops, back in the days, it was expected, oh, data scientist is going to reach search something, and then someone else will actually implement it and implement it cleanly, integrate it into the software. But now also the tooling got more mature. Data scientists are more empowered to do that themselves. So it's really important for them also to know the best practices of software engineering. And that's also what we strive towards at Data Insights. All our data scientists also know the best practices of software engineering, like CI/CD, writing modular code, and not worry just about fine-tuning the best model possible.
It's a really beneficial skill to have, because I find that data scientist team, they really need to be supplemented with a data engineering team, because a lot of the time you're trying to beg, cajole, ask nicely to get support from different engineering teams to move things along, but to have that sort of resource inside the team is really beneficial to getting things going quickly and not having bottlenecks in what's happening too.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
When you look at the customer's work that you're doing, trying to make sure that you're delivering to their expectations, have there been any learning experience that you've had over the last couple of years?
It would be summed up with what I already mentioned. So first, it's really important, especially at the beginning of a data science project, to really have quick iterations with them. Also, keep them in the loop, try to keep the loop if not 1 week, 2 weeks is already a lot of time. It's important to keep the customer in the loop the whole time. They need to provide input. You have to take it into consideration. That's one precondition to keep a project on the track. And the second thing is also what I mentioned before. It's you're not to not look at it just from pure data scientist perspective. What do I need to train the best possible model? But also think of a bigger picture, like how is this going to be run? It's so easy to just lose track of and try to fine-tune a machine learning model for that it provides 2% better accuracy, but you neglect more important things like how is this going to run, how will the customer use it, how does it integrate with their system. It's in reality, that's the part where machine learning projects fail at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Going off topic a little bit, where do you see the applications of data science, machine learning in the next couple of years, and what inspires you the most in terms of problems that can now look to be solved? Maybe giving some examples across NLP or computer vision.
I think the most important vision that people, or at least in the media, is presented the wrong way. So first thing is AI will not take away everyone's job. It's just like, let's say, invention of a steam engine or any other invention even created more jobs. And it has to be seen as something that assists you more than just do your job. It might even make people happier because AI might take off some annoying tasks that you have to do every day and spend every day 2 hours. And that's something that AI is going to do for you. The other aspect is, where we are now, there has been some use cases established that work really well. And that's definitely going to be the next step. So it's going to become more of a self-service where you don't have to get a bunch of your own data scientists to develop something for you, but you might already buy a package where you just need to streamline your data in. Of course, it doesn't work universally for any kind of problem, but for some typical problems like churn prediction or something like that, this is definitely happening and is going to be happening even more. The third aspect that becomes more and more that people notice that it's more and more important, and it was important from the start, is the quality of your data. This is something only you can solve, that not someone else can solve for you. It's so important to monitor not only your machine learning models, but also your data, because you can have the best algorithm possible. If your data is not okay, you're just not gonna get good results.
I can see where you're going with this, because self-service AI, it's what makes it so much more straightforward. And that kind of Netflix experience, it will just work. And it's pretty interesting that you may have observations to say this is going to take away all the different types of jobs, and it's not. There's so many different opportunities out there, and people are going to work in higher value tasks. That is something that people don't need to be concerned about. And it sounds like a really exciting 12 to 18 months coming down the track. And what I found been really inspired was all the different case studies now coming to market, where it's being applied either by NLP, predictive analytics, computer vision. And next 3 to 4 years, I think we're going to have even bigger applications of it, where we're probably going to stop talking about AI because it's going to be ingrained in everything that we see and do.
Exactly. And it's another interesting trend that I noticed recently is, if you think, how do you give anything data related into the hands of a user, of a business user, is through make it available through SQL. If they can query it with SQL, they have control of it. They can query the data. And an interesting trend I noticed, not just business analytics, but predictive analytics available through SQL. So imagine just instead of querying what were my numbers last quarter, it could be possible in the future, and there are startups working on that, to query what is going to be my revenue next quarter. It's an interesting pattern and it might work, but yeah, we have to see, as you said, give it a couple of years.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I'm very privileged to speak to people like yourself every day about some of the innovations that they're using and applying, and just making it easy for the internal or external customer. You've been listening to the Alldus podcast as part of our AI in Action series. My name is Mark Kelly, Chief Customer Officer at Alldus, and we've been speaking to Marin Ferara, Senior Consultant Data Science within Data Insights. Marin, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.